Do you have to register for it, Kylie, or do they just jump on? Oh, we have 5 participants.
Oh, everyone will just jump on. Yep.
Got it.
All right, thank you everyone for joining. We're going to wait a couple more minutes until we hit 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll get started. Thanks again, everyone who's joined. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes until 2 p.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. East, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and then we'll get started. Oh, thanks so much to Mike Proctor from Evolve KY. I really appreciate your comment. And yeah, we appreciate helping you and you know, for joining us and supporting Drive Electric Earth Day. And definitely everyone feel free to use the Q&A panel if you have any questions throughout the webinar. I'll also check the chat for questions, but you know, ideally put it in the Q&A panel. All right, so I think we'll get started now. Thanks again for everyone who's joined today. And I always get this question, so a reminder that the webinar will be recorded and the slides and the recording will be made available to everyone soon after the webinar. And so this today we'll be covering organizing safe EV test drives. So we'll share lots of best practices for organizing, you know, traditional EV test drives with, you know, light duty vehicles, but we'll also talk about e-bikes as well. All right, so my name is Kylie Morgan, and I'm the Assistant Program Manager at Plug in America, where I manage National Drive Electric Week and Drive Electric Earth Day. And I'm joined today by my co-host, Terry. Terry, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Terry Kirsch. I'm the Vice President of the Electric Vehicle Association and also the Vice President of Business Development with Electric Car Insider. I've been driving electric since 2013 and I'm pretty invested, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, thank you so much. All right, so today's agenda, we'll share some tips for hosting an inclusive EV event, also for engaging dealerships and EV owners, and then we'll get right into the test drive details with liability, setting up your booth, and also tips for setting up your route. We'll also talk a little bit about doing an EV test drive for an online event. And before we get into it, just a reminder that Drive Electric Earth Day is a national and international campaign of local electric vehicle events. All of our events are organized by local volunteers and EV advocates. And they're really meant to provide a non-sales, neighbor-to-neighbor environment for people to learn about the benefits of driving electric. So thanks so much to everyone on today. You know, you're the backbone of our campaign and we're excited to share some tips. All right, so for hosting an inclusive EV event, you know, we really want to focus on this because it's really important that our events are welcoming to everyone. And these are just a few tips that you can use to do that. So first, you might consider featuring used EVs. Plug in America actually has a used EV buyer's guide that you can refer to. Another good way is to highlight alternative forms of electric transportation, such as e-bikes, e-scooters, and e-buses. Also, you may want to consider if your event is easily accessible via public transportation. So if you're looking at event sites, maybe keep that in mind as one of your factors. And then also check if your event is easy to navigate using wheelchairs, canes, or other devices that assist people with moving around. If you have enough volunteers, you may also consider assigning someone to check in with and assist people with any vision, hearing, or mobility impairments. And of course, only ask if they need assistance, but if they're fine, leave them be and let them enjoy the event. Also, you can promote the event in multiple languages. And if you can recruit volunteers who speak multiple languages, that's also a great way to create a really welcoming environment where everyone has access to all of the great tips at the event. All right, now I'll pass it to Terry.
Hi, so engaging dealerships, that is oftentimes the something necessary that we do in order to, sorry about that, in order to reach out to recruit cars if you don't have enough, or if you want to work within the local community. So you can email them and phone them, but sometimes it's really best to come in person with them. I've done it myself and they don't always respond. So I've actually walked into dealerships and gotten more response that way. To find the EV certified dealers, you can go to the Plugstarcom. You can look at the state and local dealer associations by Googling them. They're usually very helpful. And also point out that this is an EV selling opportunity for them. Some things you want to let them know is there a cost for them to be involved in the event? But let them know there's also a lot of exposure out there. I think the dealers, it's a little bit different now than it was 3 years ago. You really couldn't get them to come to any events. They didn't understand, but I think everybody's getting it now. But do let them know that not only are we just, full battery electric, but we do really support the plug-in electric vehicles, the PHEVs. I'm getting word that a lot of the dealers are using that as a selling point because people want to ease into electric. So they are pushing the PHEVs. So let them know that that is welcome at the events as well. Find out how many vehicles they can bring, if they're going to be static or if they're going to be driving, see how that fits into your event. Weekdays are better than weekends for them because of course that's their big selling time. And if you can engage them to come at the beginning of the month or middle, but because at the end, that is their biggest selling time and when they close most of their deals. So as you know, a lot of you I bought cars and they're knocking on your door at the end of the month because they want to get those cars off the lot. Do be aware though that the car dealers are there to sell vehicles. And if they promise a car to you, they may not show up the next day. So you need to be on them and make sure that they can, that they're going to be there up until the very last minute, because again, they're in business to sell vehicles. And if they can sell their very last EV on the lot, they will. So make sure you either have a backup plan or you do keep that in mind. They are our friends, but again, they make a living doing that. So, you can look in LinkedIn or even Google the regional automaker representatives. There are sometimes, if you have an automaker in your town or state that you're close with, they may come represent. That's kind of a cool thing. And then if you can set up dealer appointments for them, that does take a little bit more manpower. Or if they can't bring cars, they may want to bring a representative to set up those appointments for you as well. To engage the EV owners, there's many ways you can reach out to them. Some of you are so creative, I really love it. You can reach out to the EV Association, which is a lot of you are members of, and if you're not, please feel free to go onto myeva.org and look up the chapter lists. You can get in touch with those chapters, they're always willing to help. Plug-in America volunteers, of course, if you can email support directly to at pluginamerica.org, they'll get back to you on that. Search whatever social media that you can. There are owner groups, EV clubs out there, and they love doing these events. Oftentimes they'll come they want to show their cars off. You can visit local charging stations. I have been guilty of stalking and lurking there to make new friends and see if they want to come join the association or even work one of our events. And they didn't even know that was available. So it's another way to recruit people to help with the event. And then also search your event deed, the deed page. There's a lot of good information on there for you as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Terry. Yeah, and with the deed event page, The reason we mention that is just because Electric Vehicle Association and Plug-in America, leading up to DEED, will direct our supporters to attend local events. So the earlier you have your event registered on the DEED website, the more opportunity there is for EV owners to sign up. All right. So for COVID-19 safety this year, really similar to last year, for test drives, we ask that everyone wears masks. If you're able to do touchless test drives, where essentially, the test driver just drives it without the dealer representative in the vehicle, that's ideal. But if the dealer representative needs to be in the vehicle, just make sure that it's only people within the same household in that vehicle at the same time. And if you can put a seat of space between the dealer rep and another person, that's also ideal. Definitely have windows down at all times, and be sure to clean frequently touched surfaces after each test drive. So for anyone who's interested, we'll send this slide deck after the event, and there's a link to CDC guidance on how to properly disinfect vehicles. So for insurance and liability waivers, we definitely recommend that everyone use liability waivers for all test drives. And you can email DEED support and we can provide you with a template waiver. But if you're working directly with a dealership or automaker to do the test drives, they may have their own waiver. So you just may want to incorporate that into your process. Also, before the event, make sure to email attendees if they need to bring a driver's license, or if there's a minimum age limit. And always check if your site host requires insurance for EV test drives. Sometimes they may not require it for a general event, but if you're doing test drives, that's when you'll need insurance. If you are an Electric Vehicle Association chapter, generally they can provide, EVA can provide you with insurance. If you're an individual, EV owner who's organizing an event and you're not affiliated with another organization, then Plug-in America may be able to provide insurance. And a key tip here is if you're having EV owners provide test drives, you really want to make sure that their own auto insurance covers the activity. Even if you have broader insurance for the event, they're the ones who will be liable if anything happens because they're using their own personal vehicle. And then, of course, check for any other local, state, or federal requirements. Certain states or local areas may require permits or certain road closures for a test drive activity. So you just want to check and see if that's the case.
Okay, so let's talk about the day of the event, checking in and staging. The first thing you want to do is make sure it's a centralized location so you're easily found and accessible. Do you want to check for driver's licenses, like Kylie talked about, if insurance is a requirement, and have them sign their liability waiver? Make sure you have 1 to 2 people checking the IDs and the waivers, or however many you think. If you have a super busy event, you might want to have more. It might just be 1, so make that decision on your own. We certainly don't want people waiting around that they wind up load balancing by leaving, and we don't want that to happen. So it's a good idea to have colored wristbands so that when they get in the cars, people can see instantly that they've been approved and vetted by insurance and driver's license. So it's easily seen that way. And also too, a list of all the available vehicles that are there, whether it be static or test drive, is a great thing for them to be able to see what they're going to be driving. So the staging area, again, make sure that that's easily accessible. You want to make sure it's away from pedestrian traffic. These cars are quiet and other people can't hear them. So we want to make sure that it's easily seen. And also to make sure that the people that are driving the cars realize it's quiet too, and they have to be aware. You all know that. So use cones and signage so that we know where there's no pedestrian traffic or where it should not be. If you have volunteers, they're great to have to help direct traffic. Some people are really good at that, and if you do have that, that's great. But use cones and some signage so people know where no pedestrians should be going for safety purposes. The day of the event for routes and talking points, We have on here 10 to 15-minute route, with, of course, everything has to be within the law. Make sure there's a variety of speeds if you can, always right turns. For me, when I do a lot of right seat myself, even with my car. And I tell people right away, let's get the safety going. Check your mirrors. Is your seatbelt on? Or can you reach the pedals? Everything's great. The rear view mirror. And then I say, let's get going on our drive and we'll chat as we go. If you have a super busy event, you really want to make it as quick as you can. You don't want to rush anybody, but you certainly don't want to just lollygag because we don't want people to have to wait too long. If your event's a little bit slower or smaller, you can spend more time, but do keep that in mind that there are people waiting. In my opinion, this is not a test drive at a dealer, that we precede the sales cycle. So we want to make sure they understand I'm not here to talk about the features of the car as much, but to tell you how I charge. What do I do when I'm short on range? What do I do if I have a long trip? And how do I use my my PlugShare app? If I'm not at home, how do I charge in the wild? Those are the things they want to hear from us as EV owners, not necessarily tell me the trim model of this car. So if they say, can I see the trunk or the front, you can certainly show them that, but be aware of your surroundings and make sure that your folks that are working the event understand if there's a lot of people there, there's not a lot of time to show the car off. And not to mention, sometimes I can do 30, 40 drives in a day. I forget what I've said. So to me, I have kind of a routine down where I get going and I make sure that we're on the road quickly. I give them the high points, talk about what they're going to do, answer their questions, and then the next person goes. But again, if you have a smaller adventure, it's a little bit slow, you can spend more time. But again, getting back to that right turns only, we want to make sure we do compare what an internal combustion engine vehicle has with the points of it's quiet, that our EVs they don't have vibration, the rapid acceleration, they're super zippy with no jerking or shifting, but they're not golf carts, of course, but it's good comparison, and that they're responsive, and the regen braking is really important. I usually tell my people, be aware if your car has regen, that when you pull your foot off the accelerator, you're going to feel a pullback. Don't be alarmed. That's there by design. So to tell them that's important. And the fact that you love your car, because we are the evangelists out there. So make sure you let them know that as well. That's important.
Awesome. And I was going to say, before we move on to after the test drive best practices, we just wanted to provide a bit of guidance on, disinfecting the vehicle. Just make sure that you hit all of those areas that people are likely to touch during the drive. So the seat, the front seats, the steering wheel, touch panels, inside and outside door handles, and make sure to keep the doors and windows open while you're doing that, and wear gloves. And I don't know, Terry, if you have experience with this, but sometimes we suggest that people print out a route of the the driving route for each driver before they take off. But if you don't have a printed map, at least just kind of review it with them verbally before they go.
Right, that is a good idea. And typically when people come to the event, they're usually familiar with the area. And when I do it, I just say, you're going to turn right here, you're going to turn right there, that kind of thing. But it does look professional if you do have a route map that they can sort of see where they're going. You will have people that say, well, can't we get on the interstate? And the answer is, no, we're not doing performance drives. We do want you to see that the cars have power and torque. But if those are things you want, you can refer them back to the dealer. We want safety first, always.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry.
And did you want me to talk about after? I guess I can do that right now.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. So you want people we encourage them to go to Plugstarcom. Those are the dealers that have been certified on knowing how to talk about EVs. Tell them to go browse all the vehicles out there. There's so many more new cars coming out right now. The googly is our friend. So make sure we always tell them to search what those are. Look up incentives by zip code for your city, state, utility, all of that. There's a lot out there. The other EV certified dealers, qualified electricians, that's important. When I did my car, it was, I put a plug in the garage, a NEMA, I think it was a 1450. And I didn't tell them it was for an electric car. I told them it was for my dryer. And the price suddenly went down from $2,000 to $600. So explaining them about on how to talk to the electricians is important. You don't always have to do that, but that's a suggestion, of course. And then tell them how to look for chargers in the wild. You can share I can share the plug share and show them the differences. It's kind of impressive when they go, oh, I didn't know that was all available. They're all kind of shocked and stunned and pleased. So that's important. If you have, make sure you provide the EV materials that are going to be sent to you in your kit. Those will help you as well. Offer to connect to any of the local organizations or the partners, Electric Vehicle Association, Sierra Club, EV Hybrid Noir, and those chapters as well. So get them involved, tell them to become advocates. It's a great social climate for everybody, to work together. And these are avenues in which they can do that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Terry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So e-bikes. E-bikes are a great way to provide an additional event activity for kids or, even adults at your event. You will want to advise attendees to bring a helmet and wear proper footwear before the event. And for kids, we recommend, using a parking lot and kind of sectioning off that area as a no pedestrian or vehicle traffic area where they can use the bikes and scooters. If you can, one person monitoring for safety is best. And if you're doing adult test rides on the street, we would recommend using the same check-in procedure as for EV test drives. So you want to check that they have a driver's license and have them sign a liability waiver. If you're able to provide a route map that includes bike lanes, that is obviously best. But your area may not have bike lanes. And you definitely want to demonstrate how to use them. E-bikes are very different, from normal bikes, and they have a lot of power to them. So they can get away from you, especially if you're riding them for the first time. And in fact, some people have even told me, even for adults, just having these rides in the parking lot may even be best and safest rather than having people ride them for the first time on the street. So some of the ways that e-bikes are different is that you'll want to brake earlier because they're heavier and faster. They're also most efficient when pedaled at a faster cadence. So if you pedal faster, you'll extend the battery life. Slower spinning will reduce it. And if you're able to ride in low assist modes, that will extend your battery life. And then finally, if you're in cold temperatures, the battery life will be reduced. All right, so next we're going to talk about an online event, virtual test drive. And Plug in America has an example of this that you can use. It's available to the public on YouTube. So, feel free to play that YouTube video during your event if that's helpful. And during the test drive, for an online event, we would recommend recording the test drive before your event rather than trying to do it live during an online event. The reason being is that when you're recording it live and you're driving, your cell phone is pinging from cell tower to cell tower, and usually your video quality won't be that great. So if you can record it beforehand, you can have a more polished video. But some tips for this is, show the EV make and model. So you might want to have a shot where you go around the vehicle. Next, show charging and explain how it works. Then while the driver is, showing how the vehicle drives, you can use that opportunity to talk about topics like charging, driving in cold weather, charging in public and different things like that. So it's not just quiet while they're driving. You can also find creative ways to show the driving experience virtually. One example in the Plug in America test drive is that while he's merging onto the freeway and showing the rapid acceleration of an EV, the camera person zooms into the dashboard and shows how fast the car speeds up. All right, so we're going to do our Q&A now, but if you have any questions after the webinar, please email DEED support. You can also email Electric Vehicle Association with any questions for them. All right. So we have a question here about test drives and who should be in the vehicle. So the idea here is that when you're test driving a vehicle, we'd recommend that in addition to the dealer salesperson, everyone else in the vehicle should be from the same household. So you'll have the dealer salesperson, maybe mom's driving the vehicle, and dad and her son are in the back seat. So other than the dealer representative, everyone's from the same household. And obviously, the less people who can be in the vehicle at one time is probably safer. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see if we have any other questions here. Okay. Yeah, and so we have a great comment from Guy Hall. He mentions that many of the new EVs are in high demand and not available to show. They're being sold as soon as they come into the dealer lots. But don't let that stop you. There are lots of EV owners with those new EVs who are excited to show them off. So that can be a great way to feature those EVs at your event. Oh, another good point from Guy Hall. Make sure that you know the difference between a driver's license and a state ID card. They can look very similar, but you want to make sure that you're approving a driver's license. All right. And another comment here, which is pretty interesting, and I don't know, Terry, if you have any experience on this, but the comment is that you can actually engage people while they're waiting for a test drive and kind of use the waiting time as an opportunity to educate them.
Well, in addition, I like to get people talking to each other. So people standing in line, I encourage them to sort of communicate, because oftentimes it's someone that has experience with EVs talking to those who don't, and we're building another advocate right there. So I think that's a great point, to make sure that you do engage what they can do. I have done events where we made like little sandwich boards that had information right there that if you were busy, you could at least say, point them to that. There's other educational pieces that you can create yourself, the handouts, they can look at that. But I think that is a good point, is while they're waiting, get people to talk to each other if you can't, or even have some other people that can be mingling around a runner or something along those lines. Good point.
Nice, definitely. Also, we have a question about press coverage. So we will have a training webinar on promoting your event, but that's going to actually be next Friday. And we'll cover promoting your event both to the media and public officials. All right. And then another tip that I'll impart is, now that many automakers are coming out with, new EVs, some of the dealers are receiving vehicles that are specifically for test drive events. So they're actually not available for sale. Hopefully this is the case in your area, but that may be one thing to ask, when you go to a dealership, because then they're more likely to be able to bring a vehicle. And another tip related to that is, when you're contacting a dealership, you may want to ask if there's someone who specializes in the electric vehicles on the lot. If they're there, those people often know more about EV charging and the EV ecosystem, and they're more excited to attend EV events like this. All right. Any other tips we can impart, Terry, before we leave?
No, I'm sort of racking my brain thinking what else I can do to help. I think these events are great. It never ceases to amaze me how little people know and understand, and the good work that we're doing out there. So don't be afraid, to talk to anybody that even wanders by, just to pull them in. And if you're backing up to another event, and if it's not standalone, don't be afraid to do that, because every time something happens, I always say we have so much work to do. So.
Definitely. And we did get another question if dealerships will advertise your event. As far as I know, they often, will not advertise your events. So yeah. Terry, any
Yeah.
thoughts?
I was just going to say, there's ways they can for you, not necessarily. The one thing they don't want to do is if a dealer has someone on their lot and they send them to an event like this, they're going to now be exposed to other cars. So that's the one thing they don't want to do. However, there can be ways that you can say, if they have any questions, they can certainly reach out. Like I said, see if they'll go to one of the other, EVA or Sierra Club or Plug-in EV Noir, Hybrid Noir, or even Plug-in America to get answers. But it's difficult for them to want to do that. But if they have an active person that they could send to the event, that might probably be best to have them represented. And I've even done it where I said, well, it's a shame that you can't be there because you will be the only one that won't be there. And then they turn around, they send somebody because they're like, oh, they can't miss out. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I have done that before and then they came. So
nice. And another tip from Guy Hall that for those hard to find newer EVs, you may want to ask the dealership to pass along an invitation for the event to their recent buyers. I think this is probably something where if you've had a relationship with a local dealership for a long time, they may be more willing to help you with this request.
Based on the other comment that Frederick sent about that he likes to drive them out and let them drive back, that's not really a bad plan. That way that you can sort of show them how that works. Some of the cars are funky to drive. I mean, I have a brand new 22 Model S and there's no stock. It's just you drag the little thing up and down and it kind of takes a bit of a demonstration. That's not a bad, I haven't done that in the past. I've just sort of explained it to them to get them on the road. One thing I did mention about the regen braking, that's kind of important. But yeah, that's not, I think I kind of like that. That's a good tip. Good point.
Yeah, and Terry, just to clarify, when you say drive out and then the tester drives back, do you mean like drive them to the street and then?
Well, maybe to a stopping point where I can, like, you're my driver or you're in the passenger seat, I'm the driver's seat, I drive to a point, then we switch. I think that's what you mean, Frederick. Is that right? I think that's what he means.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so he can show the acceleration, the regen braking. That's not bad at all. I like that.
Nice. Awesome. All right. And another question. Let's see. So how are you keeping track of participants? So this is a great question, actually. If you have a deed event page, on your event page, in the admin features section, you can set up a feature where attendees can opt in to share their email address with you. But you do have to actually set that up before attendees can opt in. So if you have a deed event page already, I would make that the first thing you do after the page is created. And that way you can keep in touch with attendees. Another way to keep track of participants is, have a sign-in sheet, but maybe even just have a count of conversations. I know this is something, a really cool thing that Cool Davis and the Sacramento EV Association does, where they track the number of conversations they have at the event. And that's really important, in addition to attendees, because those are the actual people you engaged, not just who walked through your event.
You can also do, if you are so technically inclined, even have a laptop there or an iPad where you can't, because I know a lot of events and even some of our chapters, they want to keep track of who's there so they can send them information when they have the next event and just start a little database. So you can certainly do that in any sort of contact management that you might use. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Another great question here. Do the exhibitors pay a fee to participate? So, you guys as the local event organizers get to decide this. If you'd like to have a small or large fee for exhibitors at your event, you definitely can.
A great fundraiser. It's a good fundraiser.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then another great point. So about you can use clickers to track attendees at the event. And so I've used those before at our events as well. You just, kind of click it every time someone comes up to your booth.
Oh, Beverly, that's funny. Big was the answer. Yeah, you're right. I've been to so many dealerships where I've asked them questions and they just didn't know the answer. And that's why our work is so important, because oftentimes we know more than they do. So
Yeah, and I think also from a consumer perspective, like someone who really knows nothing about EVs, their main concern with the battery is probably just that they don't want to have a $3,000 bill in 5 years to replace it. They just want to know it's reliable. And so if you can provide, reference a study or, introduce them to an EV owner who's had their EV for 10 years, just assure them that this is a reliable piece of technology. It's not this untested, new
right.
technology.
And it's not going away for
Mhm.
sure. So Mike, that's interesting that you say that about having it, you're backing up to doing your event at a library where there's a petting zoo. It's so funny how you say they'll bring their parents over. They certainly will. These children and kids and young adults and teenagers know so much about these electric cars. It is so exciting. It is definitely our future. And I love dealing with that. One little guy walk up who was literally 3 years old. He could not even see the check-in table. And he said, Mom said, what car do you want to drive? And he pointed, he says, the performance model.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. So yeah, I love that, Mike. That's great. Thank you for that feedback.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so cute.
You had another question about what time of day is best for these kinds of events. Um, I would say the best thing is if you can co-locate with an existing event. But I don't know, Terry, if you've had different experiences with different event times.
Well, most people, if it's on a Saturday, Sundays are difficult because there are a lot of churchgoers out there. But Saturdays, typically people want to get their day started and going. When we do our events, they're typically 10 o'clock, and it's not early enough for some people, but it's hard to get everything set up. So it really depends. If you do it too early, people kind of get annoyed. I would say the sweet spot would be between 8 and 10, and then get it going. But 9 o'clock is what I like to do. So
Awesome. Yeah, when Plug in America does our events, we usually end it by 2 p.m. But I mean 4 p.m. also works, but yeah, morning to afternoon is great.
yeah, to me, 9 to 3 is my sweet spot that I like to do, about 6 hours. But there are people that just do a couple of hours. It just really depends on what your community likes. I mean, you probably know that better than anybody.
Definitely. Oh, and a good point from Zan. Media folks like mornings, so.
Good point. That's great.
Awesome. All right. Well, I guess I do have one more tip. Parting tip is that, with dealers, they're going through an inventory, kind of shortage right now. So even if they're not able to bring vehicles to your event, I think the most important thing is just establishing a relationship with them. So even if you can help them set up appointments with attendees, if they can send a representative, or even if you do that on your own, that relationship that you build over the years will only help you in the future to have a more reliable source of dealer vehicles. All right. Well, I think that's it for me. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And as always, thank you so much for participating and commenting. I really love how these events are, such a group chat between all of us. So I really appreciate everyone on the call today. And I hope everyone has a great weekend and stays warm or dry, depending on where you're at.
I know it's kind of all over the board across our country right now. You can see my palm trees in the back. I'm in a warm climate. So, right.
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.